Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clay, and I am the Bucks believer. Let's start this one off with a big round of applause for the Bucks. They were taking on the conference-leading Brooklyn Nets, a team that they are highly likely to run into at some point in this year's playoffs, and they were able to come away with a 117 to 114 victory in which they played just about as well as you could possibly ask them to do. Let's start off by talking about how they looked on the offensive end of the court, and then we'll get to how they looked on defense a little bit later. When talking about offense, you immediately have to start with the performance of Giannis Antetokounmpo, who was absolutely terrific for the Bucks in this game. He finished with a 49.8 rebound stat line and was very efficient, shooting 21 for 36 from the field and 4 for 8 from beyond the three-point line. Giannis was able to do just about whatever he wanted against a Brooklyn team that is not super well fit to defend him. For the most part, Brooklyn put DeAndre Jordan on Giannis as the primary defender, and while Jordan did do a good job of keeping himself between Giannis and the basket, Antetokounmpo was still easily able to score on DJ because he was just able to score over him, whether that meant pulling up for three-pointers, which Giannis made 4 of, probably I guess it was his season high as they said on the broadcast. He also was able to get to his little mid-range jumper that we've seen him knock down really frequently this season. It seems to me that he has taken a huge step forward with that mid-ranger, and he can hit it in a variety of situations, whether that be off balance in a Dirk type shot and as a little step back, or even just as a pull-up as he comes toward the defender that he's attacking. Giannis also got to the rim and threw down a couple dunks over DeAndre Jordan where he was pretty much just able to push the Nets big man all the way under the basket for an easy finish. In the second half, the Nets went with a little bit of a different look as Blake Griffin was more frequently the primary defender on Giannis. Griffin did a better job than Jordan did as he was able to take a charge and also force Giannis into some difficult shots in that fourth quarter. But for the most part, this was a great game from Giannis, and it's super encouraging as a Bucks fan to see him dominate this Nets defense in the way that he did, because that's a matchup that's going to be easily exploited for the Bucks in the playoffs, and unless the Nets can find a solution for defending Giannis, it's going to be tough for them to beat this Bucks team. Chris Middleton also stepped up and had a huge night for the Bucks, pouring in 26 points and grabbing 11 rebounds while shooting 11 of 21 from the field and 3 for 7 from beyond the three-point line. Chris had a huge 12-point first quarter where the Bucks were struggling a little bit on offense. Only Giannis, Chris, and Drew were able to score in that first quarter, and Middleton did a nice job of carrying the scoring load, putting up 12 points. Giannis didn't really get going until the second quarter, so for Giannis to keep the Bucks afloat was certainly good, and he also hit some huge shots in the fourth quarter, including one ridiculous floater where he probably got fouled by Jeff Green as he just kind of threw it up off balance and somehow it went in. He also made some pull-up three-pointers and was just overall really tremendous for the Bucks tonight. I give him a lot of credit because the Bucks are not going to be able to rely on Giannis to beat the Bucks single-handedly. They're going to need Chris to hit some tough shots, especially tough jump shots, and that is kind of Chris's specialty, but he struggled with those shots a little bit over the past couple weeks. So to see him have a game like this is certainly encouraging, and it was great to see him step up against a Nets team that was able to put Kevin Durant or Jeff Green, two really good perimeter defenders with a lot of length on him. Chris was able to hit shots in those guys' faces, and it was good to see. Jrue Holiday struggled a little bit more than the other two members of the Bucks' big three, but he still had a solid game, pouring in 18 points on 7 for 16 shooting. One thing that I did think was a little problematic with Jrue is that he went just 1 for 4 from the free throw line, including 2 big missed free throws with a couple of minutes left in the fourth quarter that could have really hurt the Bucks if they wouldn't have been able to get stops on defense. However, it did work out. The Bucks were still able to win despite the poor free throw shooting, but Jrue did miss 2 big free throws in another game over the past week. I think it was against the Atlanta Hawks. So that is a little bit concerning. Jrue overall is a pretty solid free throw shooter, shooting in the high 70s for the season, but I hope that he can knock down clutch free throws because the Bucks are certainly going to need him to at some point during their playoff run. Other than the big three guys for the Bucks, who all had solid games, and in Giannis' case, outstanding games, the Bucks didn't get too much offensive support from their role players. guys like Dante DiVincenzo, Pat Connaughton, PJ Tucker weren't able to chip in too much scoring, and Bobby Portis was out for this game, so that was a key scoring piece off the bench that was absent. However, Bryn Forbes did have a really nice game for the Bucks, and he is a key role player because when the Bucks are looking for someone to hit a shot, he's one of the best in the league at doing so. So it's good to see Bryn continue to stay hot shooting. He had that 30-point game a couple nights ago against the Houston Rockets, and today he had 12 points on 4 for 7 shooting in just 19 minutes. So Bryn is a key piece for the Bucks, and I hope to see him continue to hit jump shots because that's important for the Bucks' success. Now that we've talked about the offense a little bit, let's move on to the defensive end. I think that those are the main points for the offense. And on defense, I also want to talk about the Bucks just had 10 turnovers. That's been a bit of an issue over the past month. There's been a few games where they've gotten close to 20 turnovers, so to see them limit the turnovers in a big game like this was a good sign. On defense, Kevin Durant was able to really slice up the Bucks. And that's despite the 3 main defenders on him, Jrue Holiday, Chris Middleton, and PJ Tucker, all doing a really solid job in my opinion. They forced KD to take a lot of contested jump shots. I can't remember a single shot that Kevin took that was wide open. But Durant is just a ridiculous jump shooter. He's able to use his incredible height and very high release point to get difficult shots up despite defenders being in his face. And he did so tonight, finishing with 42 points on 16 for 33 shooting and 7 for 13 shooting from the three-point line. A key thing here is that Kevin shot 16 for 33. That is just one shot under 50%, but players like Kevin Durant are going to get their buckets. They're going to score a lot of points. The key is that you can limit them and force them to be inefficient shooting from the field. And that the Bucks, with that combination of Chris and Jrue and PJ, being able to limit him to under 50% shooting is a good sign. So even though KD did get up to 42 points, I still think the Bucks did a good job on him. And they also forced Durant into 5 turnovers. That came a lot from on-the-ball pressure from the 3 guys I talked about before, but there were also plays where guys like Dante DiVincenzo and Pat Connaughton were able to come over from off the ball, put some pressure on Durant, and force him to make either a bad pass or lose the ball out of bounds. So overall, I can't complain about the job the Bucks defense did on KD, even though he did score 42 points. I did think they did a slightly better job on Kyrie, as Irving had 20 points. He also added 7 rebounds and 6 assists, but he was really inefficient, shooting just 8 for 21 from the field and 2 for 8 from the three-point line. He also had 4 turnovers, and I thought that Jrue Holiday and Dante DiVincenzo, the 2 guys who are primarily guarding Kyrie, did a really nice job of defending him and forcing him into both difficult shots and situations where he was uncomfortable, and that's what led to Kyrie having a pretty underwhelming game in a situation where all of the other All-Stars in Giannis, Chris, and KD all having terrific games. So a nice job by the Bucks on Kyrie. Obviously, this Nets offense looks a lot different when they have James Harden, with him being out for the foreseeable future with his hamstring injury. We're not sure when that's going to be, however. So for the Bucks to win this game in the way they did and to play defense the way they did, despite giving up 14 offensive rebounds to the Nets, was a good sign. And I also don't necessarily think that the offensive rebounds they gave up are a terrible indicator moving forward. One reason for that is that the Bucks rank in the top 5 in the entire NBA when it comes to defensive rebounding rate for the season. And in general, they've been even better than that. There's just been a couple of games over the past month or so where offensive rebounds have been a problem for them, and this was certainly one of those. DeAndre Jordan had 10 points and 11 rebounds, and 4 of those rebounds were offensive boards, and quite honestly, it felt like a whole lot more because there were other plays where DJ was able to either tip the ball off of Bucks players or tip the ball back to one of his teammates for an offensive board. The Bucks do have to do a better job of not allowing second possessions to their opponents, but I also think that they'll be able to limit the Nets to one possession more often when DeAndre Jordan is forced off the court. And as we saw in the second half of this game, he's not going to be able to stay on the court unless he can reliably guard Giannis. And with Giannis having like 38 points in the first 3 quarters when DJ was his primary defender, I don't necessarily think that that is a likely outcome for the Nets. So most likely they're going to have to end up benching Jordan, and that will take away a lot of their offensive rebounding weaponry. Landry Shamet also stepped up for the Nets, having a big game with 17 points on 5 for 9 shooting and 4 for 7 3-point shooting. There were a couple of plays where Bucks helped defenders, overhelped off of Shamet, and he certainly made them pay from beyond the arc. The Bucks did do a good job of limiting his his co-shooter, I guess we can say, in the Nets backcourt in Joe Harris, as Harris had just 5 points, I believe, and only made 1 3-pointer. There were no times where Harris was wide open for looks, and that's what the Bucks have to do to beat this Nets team. Joe Harris is probably one of the 3 or so best shooters in the entire NBA. So to limit him to 1 3-pointer made is definitely a good sign, and the Bucks have to continue to stay disciplined defending him on Tuesday night. Finally, I want to talk about the contributions that some of the guys that weren't necessarily matched up on KD and Kyrie made. Pat Connaughton did a great job as a help defender, coming away with 3 steals in this game, and Dante DiVincenzo was flying around the court in help positions in a similar way. He didn't have any steals to show for it, but he made some huge defensive plays, coming away with deflections and tips out of bounds and stuff like that. Now, the Bucks forced the Nets into, I think, 17 or 18 turnovers in this game, and that is certainly encouraging, especially when you consider that the Bucks had a couple different occasions in which they had deflections and weren't able to secure the steal. So that kind of defensive effort is huge. And I also liked what I saw from the Bucks rim protectors, as they had 11 blocks as a squad. Brook Lopez was the leader in that, as he had 5 blocks. This wasn't a great game for Brook, and we saw him get played off the court in the fourth quarter. I don't think he played at all in that fourth quarter, actually. But he did do a nice job of protecting the rim when he was in the game and made some really nice help defense plays. Giannis did the same, coming away with 3 blocks. Giannis not having to match up with KD and Kyrie because of the additional on-ball defenders the Bucks have added is a huge boost for the Bucks on defense, because he can play in that helper role where he guards someone who is more of a side piece, whether that's Blake Griffin or Jeff Green, and Giannis can use that as advantage to help off, sag off, and just be a complete menace on the defensive end of the court, where he can clog up everything and make it really difficult for the Nets to get anything going. He had 3 blocks and a steal in this game, and he made a lot of tough situations for the Nets on the offensive end. Overall, this felt like a playoff game, guys. It was so much fun to watch. It was such a heated contest, and it was a lot of fun to watch. I want to give both teams a lot of credit for a well-played game, and I hope Tuesday night is just as great as tonight was. I'd love to see this be a playoff series, because these two teams are really evenly matched, and there are a lot of interesting storylines when it comes to coaching decisions, and overall, I really would love to see them play in the playoffs. Let me know what you thought of this game in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe, especially if you are a fellow Bucks believer. This is the place for you. I think that I've covered everything that I wanted to cover, so that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.